Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Early morning sunlight poured through the stained glass windows of St. Michael's Church, casting flecks of light on the pristine white casket. The low music of the organ echoed in the empty church as James Bennett stood alone by the coffin of his son Marcus, his trembling fingers caressing the blue Tyrannosaurus Rex toy that rested on top of the coffin. This was Marcus' favorite toy, and whenever someone called it just a dinosaur, Marcus would always seriously correct him that it was a Tyrannosaurus Rex. James remembers that his son always took the toy to school, and even when the teacher said to put it in his bag during class time, Marcus insisted on letting it watch him. The toy looked out of place with the stately white roses surrounding it, as out of place as the anger and sadness that was churning inside James at the moment. The white flowers cascaded over each other, almost drowning the tiny coffin. "Marcus will hate these flowers," he whispered, his voice hoarse from the long silence. His wife Sarah should have remembered that Marcus was allergic to lilies, if she really cared about organizing a funeral for her son. But she wasn't even involved in any of the funeral preparations. Everything was done by James alone. The early morning sunlight was becoming harsh and James squinted slightly. It reminded him of Marcus' last waking morning alive, when the sun shone through the hospital window in the same way. Marcus still had the strength to speak that day and asked in his weak voice, "Daddy, is Mommy coming today?" James remembers how he fought back tears and made up another lie. "Yes, baby, Mommy will be here soon." But Sarah didn't come, just like she missed every day after that, until Marcus closed his eyes forever. The cell phone in her pocket vibrated and the screen showed a message from her. "Sorry, I can't make it to the funeral. I have an important business meeting in Seattle. Kiss Marcus for me. Love you all." James' fingers clutched the phone until his knuckles turned white. Seattle, another lie. He'd long since seen the flight confirmation emails in their shared account. She was on the balcony of some luxury resort in Hawaii at the moment, probably enjoying the sunrise and the sweet time she'd betrayed. The thought made James' stomach twist. He remembered the last 3 months of investigation, the hotel bills, the credit card records, the evidence of secret dates. He could have exposed her immediately, but for Marcus' sake, he chose to remain silent. He wanted his son to maintain at least a favorable impression of his mother in the last hours of his life. Now that concern is gone. "Mr. Bennett," the soft voice of David, the funeral director, interrupted his thoughts. "It's time for us to start seating the family." James nodded, unable to trust his voice. He took one last look at Marcus' peaceful face, the pale little face still wearing his trademark light smile. It was David's doing. He'd managed to make Marcus look as if he were asleep, not as if he was suffering from the aftermath of an illness. People arrived one by one: Mrs. Wilson and Mr. Thompson, Marcus's kindergarten teachers, neighbors who had watched him chase butterflies in their front yards, distant relatives who had rushed in. They took their seats quietly, with similar sadness and sympathy on their faces. The air was filled with the scent of flowers and sandalwood, and James felt a little suffocated. These people had come to say goodbye to Marcus, while his own mother had chosen to spend her vacation with her lover. His mother, Elizabeth, appeared beside him, her eyes red and swollen but still dry. She had always been a strong woman, rarely shedding a tear, even in the toughest of times. "The flowers are beautiful, James," she said softly, trying to wash away the sadness with everyday conversation. "Marcus is allergic to lilies," he said flatly, a hint of imperceptible reproach in his voice. She gently gripped his arm. "Where's Sarah?" "A meeting in Seattle." The lie left a bitter taste on his tongue. Elizabeth's expression hardened instantly. "She should be here. This is her son. How can she?" Her words came to an abrupt end, and she pursed her lips tightly, apparently restraining herself from uttering more words of reproach. "I know, Mom." James gazed at the coffin. "Believe me, I know all too well." More people arrived, and Marcus's best friend from kindergarten, Oliver, and his parents brought a hand-drawn picture of 2 little people playing with a dinosaur. James took the picture and murmured a thank you, his heart throbbing with pain at the crooked handwriting that read, "Best friends forever." Oliver was too young to fully understand the meaning of death, but his grief was real. Oliver was too young to fully understand the meaning of death, but his sadness was real, and James looked into the boy's red, swollen eyes, and remembered Marcus playing with him in the kindergarten playground. The cell phone vibrated again. "The meeting has been extended. I'll call you as soon as it's over. Take care." James almost laughed. Take care, just as she'd taken care of Marcus during his illness, during the countless nights in the hospital when their son had cried out for his mom, wondering why she wasn't around. Take care of yourself like she did in her last days, when Marcus's life was passing day by day while she was enjoying a stolen love affair in some hotel room. James forced himself to push away the memories. This was not the time. Not here. The priest approached, prayer book in hand. The funeral service passes in a trance of hymns and prayers. James mechanically rises, sits down, and responds, but his attention keeps drifting to the empty spot beside him where she should have been standing. His cell phone vibrated in his pocket every now and then, delivering her false concern. James felt each message like a knife, stabbing deep into his heart. His brother-in-law recited a poem about angels, his voice choking up. His brother Tom recounted Marcus's infectious laugh and obsession with dinosaurs, having to stop to wipe away tears at emotional points. James sat and listened to the eulogies with an expressionless face. His grief was too deep to be expressed in tears. At the cemetery, they handed him a white rose to place on the casket. The early spring wind was cold and wrapped in the scent of earth. The small crowd watched solemnly as he walked up, but instead of putting down the rose, he placed Marcus's favorite dinosaur encyclopedia next to the blue Tyrannosaurus Rex. "Good night, baby," he whispered. "Daddy will always love you." The phone vibrated one last time. "Been thinking about you guys. Meeting's still going on. I'll call you later." James stared at the screen of his cell phone and felt a coldness rise from his heart that he had never felt before. As he gazed at the dirt that would soon bury his son, he remembered the past months of preparation. Marcus had been his reason for keeping quiet, for swallowing the bitter fruit of her betrayal over and over again and maintaining the illusion of a happy family. Even as he'd gathered evidence, documented her lies, and quietly prepared for the destruction of the world she'd so carefully built, he'd held on. Now, as she enjoys the sunshine on a beach thousands of miles away, he feels the last vestiges of mercy inside him disappear. If she thought she was starting a new life, fine, but before she did, he was going to destroy everything about her. The thought gave him a strange sense of calm, like the quiet before a storm. The crowd began to disperse. Elizabeth tried to convince him to go to lunch with him, but he politely declined. He had work to do. "Goodbye, Marcus," he said softly, placing the unused white rose on the grave. "I promise she'll regret not coming today." He turned to leave the cemetery, each step taking him further away from the man he once was, closer to the man her back leaves had molded him into. Sarah thinks she's safely tucked away in a Hawaiian paradise with her lover. She's about to find out that paradise can turn into hell in just a few clicks. A time of sorrow will come, but for now, it's time for revenge. As James walked towards the parking lot, his phone vibrated again. This time, he simply deleted the message without checking it. The plan had begun, and every step from now on would bring her closer to the punishment she deserved. The sun set in the west, casting long shadows on the tombstones. James stood beside the car and took one last look back at his son's grave. The last trace of tenderness under his eyes was gradually replaced by coldness. Starting tomorrow, he would execute his carefully prepared plan. The world would soon learn that carrying a leaf was more than a moment of weakness. It was a choice, and every choice had its price, especially when that choice leaves a child to face death alone. James started the car and drove away from the cemetery. The sky began to drizzle, and the raindrops gently tapped on the car window, like Marcus's last goodbye. He knew that from this moment on, he would no longer be the forgiving husband, the gentle father. Sarah's back and Marcus' death had changed him. The flames of vengeance will burn away everything, including the man he once was. But none of that matters anymore. What matters is making her pay, making her feel the pain of losing everything, just like he was feeling now. The rain was getting heavier as James drove his car through the empty streets of the city, the windshield wipers swinging rhythmically, like the hands of a clock going backwards, taking his mind back to the night that changed everything 3 months ago. It was a normal Tuesday evening, and James was sitting at the kitchen table, helping Marcus finish his dinosaur puzzle. With steaming macaroni rolling around on the stove, the only food their picky 5-year-old son would eat these days. "Daddy, this puzzle won't fit," Marcus pouted, holding up a piece with a T-Rex claw on it. "Try turning it around, baby." James glanced at his watch, 7:45 p.m. She was late again. Footsteps came from the stairwell and Sarah walked into the kitchen, wearing a black dress he'd never seen before and carrying a designer briefcase. An unfamiliar perfume filled the air as she moved. "Working late again?" James asked, stirring the pot of macaroni. "The Morrison merger is driving me crazy," she replied as she examined her reflection on the microwave glass. "And Johnson wants the report by tomorrow morning. Third time this week." He kept his tone calm, but his brain was already registering all sorts of incongruities. The new dress, the perfume, the well-groomed hair. All of it seemed out of place in what she claimed was a busy workday. "What's that supposed to mean?" Her tone took on a warning note. "Nothing, just an observation." He turned off the stove. "Marcus, dinner is ready. Can we watch Jurassic Park while we eat?" Marcus asked, raising those big brown eyes that looked like hers with anticipation. "Not tonight, little one, but we can read your new dinosaur book after dinner." "I won't eat with you guys." Sarah was already heading for the door. "Don't wait up for me." "Mom." Marcus' lower lip quivered slightly. "When are you coming back?" She stopped and placed a soft kiss on her son's forehead. "It's late, sweetheart. You'll be asleep by the time I get back to check on you." The door closed behind her, and James counted to 10 before pulling out his phone and opening their banking app. There was a recorded purchase from Sephora earlier in the day, $200 in makeup and perfume that she had supposedly used while working in the office all day. That night, after reading Marcus 3 bedtime stories and pouring 2 glasses of water, James sat in his study and began to dig deeper. Credit card statements revealed patterns he'd been blind to before. Purchases for 2 at upscale restaurants on nights she claimed to be working late. Bills from downtown hotel bars, purchases from a lingerie store last month. He certainly hadn't seen any new lingerie. Hovering over their phone carrier's website, with a single click, he could view her detailed call history. Yes, he needs to know the truth. The next morning, after dropping Marcus off at school, he called in sick. Her iPad lay quietly on the kitchen counter, forgotten in the rush of the morning meeting, and James's fingers trembled as he typed in Marcus's birthday, the number she used for all her passwords. The screen unlocked and hundreds of messages appeared, all stored in a folder labeled Work Items. As he scrolled down, his stomach began to churn. Conversation logs and photos made him want to vomit, and the timestamps perfectly corresponded to what she called overtime. One message from last night stung especially hard. "Last night was fantastic. Can't wait for the Seattle meeting next week and finally get to spend time together without interruptions. David." James's vision blurred. The Seattle meeting, in the same week as her claimed business trip to Hawaii. He methodically took screenshots to preserve all the evidence, sent them to a secure email address, and then carefully erased all traces of his browsing. Then he stepped into the shower and vomited until all that was left was bitter bile. That night, he watched Marcus chase fireflies in the backyard, his son's laughter a stark contrast to the anger burning in his chest. For Marcus' sake, he would stay silent and do nothing. Their son deserved a stable home, even if it was built on lies. "Dad, look. I caught it." Marcus held up his little hand, the glow of the fireflies flickering between his fingers. James forced himself to smile. "That's great, baby. You're getting good at it. Can we wait until Mom gets back to show her? Firefly will probably be asleep by then, but we can take a picture and show her tomorrow." Marcus nodded excitedly, and James snapped a picture of his son's brightly smiling face illuminated by the shimmering light of the fireflies, forever framing the moment of pure joy. The next few weeks became an exercise in restraining anger. He watched her go out to meetings in clothes she'd bought for another man, listened to her phone conversations, and now fully understood the true meaning behind her carefully worded phrases. He recorded everything until the spring performance at Marcus's kindergarten was the final straw that broke the camel's back. Marcus plays a baby dinosaur in a school play. James sits alone in the audience, recording the performance on his cell phone while she texts him that she's stuck in traffic. Later, he discovers a purchase for dinner for two at a moody French restaurant that night. That night, after Marcus went asleep, James began to plan. He consulted financial advisors and lawyers about hypothetical legal issues in the name of estate planning. He gathered evidence, moved assets, and prepared for every possible scenario, all while playing the role of a loving wife to perfection. He kisses her goodbye in the morning, remembering the taste of lies on his lips. He questioned her about her day, knowing every answer was false. He acts the part, all for Marcus, until the diagnosis that changes everything. The hospital corridors seemed to stretch endlessly, the smell of disinfectant burning James' nostrils as he paced back and forth outside Marcus' room. The screen of her cell phone showed a message sent to her an hour ago. "They're going to do more tests. He keeps calling for you." No reply. He knew why she was in a hotel downtown with him. The realization corroded his stomach like acid. He sent a message, "Please come. It's important." 20 minutes later, she replied, "In the middle of a critical meeting. Can't get away. Keep me posted." That night, after Marcus finally fell asleep under the effects of the sedative, James made his decision. He opened his laptop and began executing the plan he had been planning for months. First came the financial preparations. He had documented every transaction, every lie, every back leaf. Now he began the careful transfer of assets into accounts beyond her reach. The house was in both of their names, but his grandfather's legacy, the money she thought she'd spent on renovations, lay safely in a private account. Then came the evidence, and he organized everything in chronological order. Credit card bills, hotel receipts, screenshots of text messages, photos she thought she deleted. He made multiple backups, storing them in various safe locations. Then he began drafting emails to her boss, her family, her friends, each one carefully crafted, each recipient chosen to maximize the blowback. The emails lay quietly in the drafts folder, waiting for the perfect moment. The hospital became his second home, and as Marcus' condition rapidly deteriorated, with each day bringing new challenges and new pain, James took time off work to be at his son's bedside every minute of every day. She visited occasionally, showing up between meetings, and each time Marcus's face would light up and then dim as she rushed away. It was always the same excuse. "Why isn't Mommy here?" Marcus asked one night with a high fever. "She has to work, baby." James repeated the familiar lie once again. "But she loves you very much. Can you call her?" James did as he was told, knowing she wouldn't answer. Her cell phone goes straight to voicemail, and she never turns it on during meetings. He records these moments too. Every missed call, every weak excuse, every time Marcus cries at her absence. The evidence was accumulating that she had not only betrayed her husband, but also her dying son. Driving in the rain, James gripped the steering wheel tightly as memories came flooding back. He knew what he was going to do next. The plan was already taking shape in his mind. Sarah may think she's starting a new life, but she won't know that the real hell is about to begin. Because some back leaves are not just a betrayal of a marriage. They are a desecration of an innocent child's life. And such betrayal will surely come with a heavy price. As the rain subsided, James drove into his home and glanced at a stack of condolence cards tucked in the mailbox. Instead of picking them up, he went straight into the den and opened his laptop. It was the first night since Marcus had left, and he decided not to wait. The blue light of the screen reflected off his stoic face as his fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, and he began to execute that long-planned plan. First up was Sarah's company email. He had already prepared a detailed whistleblower letter, attaching all the evidence of her fraud over the past 6 months. False travel claims, dinners for two disguised as business dinners, and bills from upscale hotels cleverly mixed in with official expenses. James organized the evidence and sent it, along with a detailed timeline, to the company's Human Resources Department and Chief Financial Officer. "Let's see how you explain all this in the morning, dear," James said softly, his finger hovering over the send button for a moment before pressing it without hesitation. In the meantime, he contacted a private investigator, Robert Miller. "I need you to go to Hawaii on an assignment." His voice was calm and cool. "Focus on the Grand Resort Hotel on Wailea Beach, Maui, room 1826. I want everything that happens there. Understood, Mr. Bennett. Need anything in particular? Take every picture you can. I want every happy moment she has after her son's funeral to be the beginning of her nightmare. The next morning, the first wave of the tsunami arrived as expected. James' cell phone was ringing nonstop with missed calls from Sarah. He ignored it and opened the company's intranet instant messaging system, thanks to his previous help in maintaining the company's IT system. Notices of emergency meetings scrolled across the screen, and internal emails from the HR department passed back and forth. Open an investigation immediately. Suspend all her privileges. Ask the legal department to intervene. The messages brought a sneer from James. At the same time, he received the first batch of photos from Robert, Sarah, and her lover, David, having breakfast on a hotel balcony, raising their glasses and smiling broadly. The timestamp on the photo shows that it's the very first morning after Marcus' burial. Come on, let's show more people this cozy scene. James began editing new emails. The first recipients were a fellowship of sisters from Sarah's church. These godly women had always held Sarah up as a model of the perfect wife and mother. Attached to the email were photos and a brief note. What was Marcus's dearest mother doing while we were holding his funeral? Sarah's cell phone seemed to be on the verge of blowing up. Her voice on the voicemail went from angry to panicked. James, what the hell did you do? The company says I'm suspended. Then came, why did Susan say she saw some kind of picture at church? This is outrageous. And finally it became a plea. Please, will you pick up the phone? Let's talk. James deleted all the messages and continued his work. New photos came in one after another. Sarah and David strolling on the beach, frolicking by the pool, kissing on the terrace. Each photo was carefully edited with appropriate caption text and then sent to a carefully selected recipient. Their neighbors received a set of photos with the caption, "Where was Marcus when she called out for her mom from her hospital bed?" Her group of college friends received another set. "This is why she missed her son's funeral." David's wife received an entire folder of their months-long private communications, along with the latest vacation photos. This is your husband's important business meeting. By noon, Sarah's social circle had begun to crumble. Her Facebook and Instagram accounts were filled with angry and contemptuous comments under them. The church's WhatsApp group had removed her. Girlfriends were sending text messages to draw a line in the sand with her. You know what's ironic, Marcus? Said James, looking at the picture of his son on the desk. She thinks she's hiding it well, but forgets that in this digital age, every lie leaves a trail. In the afternoon, new news arrives. David's wife has apparently seen the photos and confronts David in public in the hotel lobby. Robert's photos capture the scene perfectly. David explaining himself in a state of disarray, and Sarah hiding in the corner in embarrassment. James sends them out as well, so that more people will see the farce. Later in the evening, James receives an email from the company's legal department. A preliminary audit had revealed that Sarah had committed more fraud than expected, and the company had decided to file a criminal complaint. He forwards the email to her lawyer friends to ensure that her contacts in the legal profession are also completely severed. Looks like your new life isn't going too well, honey, James mumbled as he checked his bank account. In the last 24 hours, he had transferred funds from all joint accounts to accounts she couldn't reach. The credit cards had also been frozen. Let's see what heaven looks like without money. Robert continues to send updates. It appears that David has received an urgent call from his law firm. Apparently, the revelation of his affair has alerted the brass. It wasn't long before new photos showed David hurriedly packing his bags, leaving Sarah alone in his hotel room. What a familiar scene, James sneered, once again choosing to run away, as she always does when Marcus needs her. After nightfall, Sarah's text message became desperate. He's gone. I can't charge my credit card for the room. Please help me. Instead of replying, James forwarded the message to her parents with the message. This is the daughter you are so proud of. Unsurprisingly, he soon received an angry reply from his father-in-law. We have removed her from our will. No daughter would choose to cheat with her lover at her own child's funeral. At midnight, James received the last batch of photos from Robert. Sarah sitting alone in the hotel lobby, her makeup disheveled and her hands in the air. Want to keep following her? Robert asked. No, James replied. Let her fend for herself next. He leaned back in his chair, feeling a strange calm. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning. Sarah's career was in ruins. Her social circle was falling apart. Her family relationships were breaking up, and her finances were in jeopardy. But it wasn't enough. Remember what you said, Marcus? He said to the picture of his son. When will mommy come to see me? Now, let's make sure she always remembers the price of choice. The next morning, James received a flood of replies on his laptop. Sarah's co-workers were shocked and outraged by what she had done. Her BFF Rachel sent a long message. I can't believe it. I was babysitting Marcus for her the other day, and it turns out she went on a date with that guy? I never want to see her again. The company's human resources department informed them that a formal investigation had been initiated, and the legal department was preparing the charging documents. David's law firm also issued a statement announcing that it had accepted his resignation. Everything was going according to plan. You know, Marcus, said James softly, some people think betrayal is just a moment of weakness, but they're wrong. Betrayal is a choice, an accumulation of 1,000 little decisions. Each time she chose him over you. Each time she covered up the truth with lies. Each time she ran away when you needed her. Now it's time for her to pay for those choices. He turned on his computer and prepared to send the last batch of emails. They were details that her former girlfriends, co-workers, and neighbors probably didn't know. How many important moments of Marcus's life she'd missed. How many lies she'd told during her son's illness, and where she'd been during Marcus's deathbed. Each email is like a hammer blow, shattering her hard-won social facade. This is just the beginning, my dear, James said to the empty room. You think you can leave us behind and start a new life happily? No, I'm going to make you realize that there are some betrayals that take the rest of your life to pay for. The first rays of the morning sun shone through the curtains into the study, and James's email was like a stone thrown into a calm lake, stirring up a circle of breathtaking ripples. He opened the company's internal forum, and Sarah's scandal had become the talk of the town before and after dinner. The photos sent by private investigator Robert are circulating around the office, and everyone is talking about the mother who cheated on her son with her lover during his funeral. I can't believe it, Linda in the marketing department wrote on an internal forum. She always bragged about what a competent mother she was, and now it seems to be all a mask of hypocrisy. The preliminary findings of the Human Resources investigation were posted on the internal system at 9 a.m. James slowly skimmed through the report. More than $100,000 in false claims, falsified records of business activities, and misappropriation of company resources for personal appointments. Each allegation was accompanied by detailed evidence that pointed to one irrefutable fact. Sarah had systematically defrauded the company. Mr. Bennett, William Evans from Corporate Legal emailed, in light of the preliminary results of the investigation, we have decided to file a criminal complaint. Your cooperation as a witness in the investigation is required. Of course, James replied. I'll provide all necessary assistance. He attached more evidence. Bills for lovers' dates that Sarah had paid with her company credit card, and a complete record of her tampering with expense reports. Meanwhile, Sarah's social circle is experiencing a tsunami. Her best friend Emily posted a lengthy message on social media. As a mother who has also lost a child, I cannot understand or forgive Sarah's behavior. In the last moments of Marcus' life, at his funeral, she chose to betray. It was not a moment of weakness, but a series of thoughtful choices. As of today, I am severing all contact with her. The post garnered hundreds of retweets in a matter of hours. Sarah's other friends followed suit, publicly drawing a line in the sand with her. The social network she had carefully maintained for years was crumbling, falling one by one like dominoes pushed over. At noon, the CEO of the company called an emergency meeting. James learned through inside sources that the sole topic of the meeting was to deal with Sarah's fraud case. Terminate her employment immediately, the CEO's voice came through the recording, and cooperate with the police investigation. We will not tolerate this kind of behavior tarnishing the company's reputation. In the afternoon, the police intervened in the investigation. James watched as the police car pulled up in front of the office and two detectives entered the building. They took Sarah's computer, documents, and other evidence. The company's legal team cooperated throughout, providing detailed financial records and witness statements. "This is more serious than I expected," Detective Thompson, who headed the investigation, said in a conversation with James, "and it constitutes a major business fraud offense. She could face actual jail time." Sarah's attorney called and attempted to mediate. "Mr. Bennett," the attorney's voice dripped with exhaustion, "my client is willing to settle this matter privately. She will accept all responsibility for the damages." "Too late," James replied calmly. "Let the law decide what she should pay." He hung up the phone and proceeded to review the latest photos sent by the private investigator of Sarah leaving the Hawaii hotel in a state of disarray, alone and dragging her luggage with her, apparently evicted because she couldn't afford to pay her room bill. A new blow follows when Sarah's alma mater learns of the incident and removes her from its list of distinguished alumni. Her professional association launches an investigation and considers revoking her license to practice. Her once proud career is falling apart. David's situation is no better. His law firm not only accepted his resignation, but issued a public statement clearing the air with him. His wife hired the best divorce attorney in town to claim all of his assets. What was once a glorious life was shattered in a matter of days. In the evening, James received a letter from Sarah's parents. "We are ashamed to have raised such a daughter," they wrote. "We have removed her from the family trust and have asked her not to contact us again. No mother should have to do something like this at her child's funeral." The next day, a court summons is served, and Sarah will face criminal charges the following week. The news has leaked out, and the local media begins to pay attention to the scandal. Well-known business executive vacations with lover during child's funeral while suspected of massive fraud. Headlines begin to appear on news sites. James calmly watched it all happen. He opened his laptop and viewed the picture of Marcus. "See, son?" he said softly. "Some people have to realize that Backleaf didn't just do one thing wrong, but destroyed the trust of a family." Sarah's texts and calls continued. "Please, James," her voice nearly broke over the voicemail. "My career is over. My friends have left. Even my parents are ignoring me. I need your help." James deleted the messages and turned to the latest documents sent by the Ministry of Justice. The investigation reveals that Sarah's fraud dates back a year and amounts to much more than the initial estimate. The prosecution is preparing to bring multiple charges: commercial fraud, misrepresentation, and misappropriation of public funds. "Mr. Bennett," prosecutor Andrew Morris said on the phone, "given the sufficiency of the evidence and the nature of the case, we recommend the harshest possible prosecution. Do you have any thoughts?" "Pursue it to the end," James replied, his voice calm and firm, "and make her suffer the full consequences of her choices." The day of the trial came quickly. The courtroom was packed. Sarah's former colleagues, friends, and even some journalists came. And James chose to sit in the last row, watching her lose her mind in the dock. The woman who was always bright and confident was gone, replaced by a haggard, frightened stranger. "Defendant, what do you have to say about these charges?" the judge asked. Sarah's voice was barely audible. "Plead guilty." The verdict was surprisingly swift. 6 months in prison, 5 years probation, full restitution, and a lifetime revocation of the relevant license to practice law. As the bailiff stepped forward to handcuff her, she looked back at James, pleading in her eyes. But James had already gotten up and left, not giving her a chance for one last look. Walking out of the courthouse, Sarah's father stopped him. "We sold the house," the old man said, his voice hoarse, "and are ready to move to another city. Everything here is too much for us to bear." "I understand," James nodded. Marcus would understand. Later that night, as James sat alone in his study, looking at the mark of a read email on his laptop, Sarah's life fell apart. Her career was in ruins, her social relationships were gone, and her family bonds were completely severed. She's lost everything, just as she chose to give up Marcus. "This isn't the end," James said to the picture of Marcus. "It's just the beginning. When you get out, you'll realize there's no place for you in this world." That's the price of the backleaf. 6 months are a slow-moving poison, and James devotes himself to the Marcus Memorial Foundation, while keeping Sarah's situation under constant scrutiny through a variety of channels. Robert, a private investigator, sends in regular reports, documenting her every day in prison. "She's not adjusting well," Robert wrote in his latest report. The guards say she often loses sleep throughout the night and sometimes screams Marcus' name into the air. James read the report and silently filed it away. This was not the end, but a new beginning. On the day of her release, no one comes to pick up Sarah, who stands outside the prison gates clutching her few belongings, her once well-cared-for hair now disheveled and gray. She tries to use her credit card to book a cheap hotel, but the card is declined. James makes sure all her accounts are frozen. "Please, James." Her text message read, "I need help. I don't have a dime left." James looked at the screen of his phone and recalled the scene when Marcus was crying for his mom in his hospital bed. He deleted the message and turned to check on the Foundation's latest progress. In the past 6 months, the Foundation had helped more than a dozen families of critically ill children, ensuring that no child would be abandoned by their parents at the end of their lives. Sarah tries to rebuild her life, but James has already set the net. Every job application she submits receives the same response: "Sorry, we can't hire people with criminal records." Her professional license has been permanently revoked, and the doors to her once proud career in finance are forever closed to her. "You know what's ironic?" James said to Marcus' picture. "She was always so concerned about her social status that now even fast food restaurants won't hire her." Sarah's pleas for help became increasingly desperate. "I've been living in my car for a week now," she wrote. "Please do something." James forwarded the message to her parents and was rewarded with a sneer. "She's finally getting a taste of the back leaf." She tries to reconnect on social media, but James makes sure her past catches up with her. Whenever she creates a new account, photos from Marcus' hospital room and funeral mysteriously appear in her new friends' inboxes. Rachel formed a warning league to alert anyone who might be in contact with Sarah about her actions. Another account banned. Sarah's voice quivered over the voicemail. "Why don't you let me start over?" James replied softly to the empty room. "Because Marcus never got a chance to start over." News has also come in about David's recent status. His divorce was finalized and his ex-wife took everything. He's moved into a one-bedroom apartment on the other side of town and is barely making ends meet with part-time legal counseling. When Sarah tries to contact him, he simply hangs up and changes his number. "You see," James said to the picture of Marcus, "he abandoned her as fast as she abandoned us." Sarah began to wander the edges of the city like a ghost. Her credit history has been completely destroyed, and she can't rent any decent place to live. Former friends would walk in a different direction when they saw her, as if she carried some sort of contagious disease. One evening, James received a call from the hospital. Sarah was admitted to the emergency room with malnutrition and dehydration. "As her only emergency contact on file, we must notify you," the nurse said. James calmly replied, "I understand," and hung up to continue working on the Foundation's paperwork. The next day, Sarah showed up on his doorstep. "Please," her voice was hoarse, "I'm really sorry. Let me see Marcus's room, just for a second." James opened the door but didn't let her in. "Marcus' room?" His voice was icy. "Like you saw him in the last moments of his life?" "I made a terrible mistake then," she sobbed, "and I regret it every day." "Regret?" James laughed, the kind that had no warmth to it. "Regret because of everything you've lost, or because you finally realized the price of carrying leaves?" She dropped to the porch. "I've lost everything. Job, friends, family, credit, dignity, nothing." "Now you know how Marcus felt," James said calmly, "when he was lying in a hospital bed, screaming for his mom, while you were in some hotel room. He lost everything too, including his life." Sarah breaks down and cries, "What can I do to make you forgive me?" "Forgiveness?" James shook his head. "It's not about forgiveness. It's about fairness. You chose to carry leaf, and now you're going to spend the rest of your life suffering the consequences of that choice. Just like I'm going to spend the rest of my life suffering the loss of Marcus." He closed the door to cut off her cries. Walking into the den, James turned on his computer, ready to take care of the Foundation's business. The screen showed the latest grant application. A boy Marcus's age with a similar illness. "See, Marcus," he said softly, "we can help other kids. Make sure they don't go through the pain you did." The Marcus Memorial Foundation is slowly gaining acclaim in the medical community. New families are helped every week, and each sponsored child receives a blue tea, Rex toy, just like Marcus' favorite one. And Sarah continues to roam the shadows of the city as a living warning that some back leaves take a lifetime to pay off. Her story circulates privately and becomes an after-dinner lesson. The woman who vacationed with her lover at her son's funeral, I hear she's now. One evening, a year later, James stood alone at Marcus' grave. The setting sun reflected the tombstone in gold, and a new blue T-Rex toy sat next to it. The foundation helped 3 more families, he said softly, and this time the kids made it through, Marcus. Their parents didn't move an inch, like they should have. His cell phone vibrated with an update from Robert. Sarah had been found at a shelter across town, penniless and alone. James put away his cell phone and took one last look at the tombstone. Revenge was complete, but it wasn't the end. It was a new beginning, a world without a back leaf, a world where Marcus's spirit could live on. As the sun sets, James drives away from the cemetery. Tomorrow there will be more work to do, more families to help. His life has changed. He is no longer the husband who was hurt by a back leaf, but a messenger to help others. And somewhere in the city, Sarah is curled up on a bed in a shelter, clutching a picture of Marcus cut out of a newspaper. Never able to escape the nightmare her choices have brought on. This is the price of betrayal. This is eternal punishment. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.